views are viewed as ignorant, my truth always denied. My history is shrouded in a spider web of lies. Isn't this America? Or is this America all a lie?
Of the freedom of speech, somewhere I read. Of the freedom of press, somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
How can I pledge allegiance to a country built on lies? Or raise my children to believe they're equal in its eyes? My leaders are assassinated for speaking their mind. So justice never tilts my way. I thought that she was blind. Isn't this America? Or is this America all a lie?
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop.
Good day. I am Denise DePina Reed, co-host of At the Round Table with Mamlil, a Massachusetts Association Minority Law Enforcement Officers Incorporated broadcast. And we greatly appreciate our sponsors, John B. Cruz Construction Company, 1 John Elliott Square, Roxbury, Massachusetts, third-generation family-owned, founded in 1948, to provide superior customer service and a quality product for its clients and tenants. Everyone's going green, and you should too. That's the law offices of Donald E. Green, located in the heart of Roxbury at 2235 Washington Street in Dudley Square, soon to be called Nubian Square, 617-442-0050, and also 500 North Main Street, Unit B, Randolph, Massachusetts, 02386. Last but not least, our newest sponsor, Residential Mortgages Services, will guide you home. 91 Franklin Street, Boston, Massachusetts, 02110. Contact Senior Loan Officer Cora Holbrook at 781-664-6200. That's Cora.Holbrook at rmsmortgage.com. Without their sponsorship, this broadcast would not be possible. Thank you and have a great day.
Well, we're back. This is Boston Praise Radio at the Round Table with Mamlil. I am your host, Denise DePina Reed, with my co-host, Dr. Willie Bradley, and our guests, Judith Foster and Chief. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Denise.
Good morning. You know, I can't believe we're on our third hour.
Wow. You know, it's going.
Well,
maybe we need 4 hours.
Well, you know what they say. You know, when you're having fun, time flies.
It does.
You know, but we are on our third hour. We're running directly on the internet for the last hour here on BostonPraiseRadio.tv, as well as Facebook Live. If you want to see it at the table, 617-282-0685. Those phones are still functioning, folks. 617-282-7794 or 617-265-2679. We're having a very interesting conversation about the cannabis industry coming in and some of the social issues that we're facing. If you want to just hear the conversation, you can do so on radio now by calling 712-770-7534. 712-770-7534. So there you have it. We here you guys for the next about 50 minutes, and then we're going to have to conclude our broadcast at that time. So feel free to call us. This is a very interesting and stimulating conversation, by the way. So let's get back, and I thank you guys for staying, with us.
Thanks for having us.
We were talking about the history of cannabis and how it was used to marginalize certain people,
Yes.
alienate and devalue certain demographics of America. And now that is becoming legal in many states. And I personally think within the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see the entire country actually embrace cannabis, and the industry is going to really push at that time. So we stop on how do we become more actively involved? What can we do? And also I talked about the surreptitious battle beneath the view of the average individual around maintaining existing pharmaceutical markets and making sure that this particular vehicle doesn't hurt existing pharmaceutical markets. We have to be aware of that.
Yeah, and it absolutely will hurt existing
And it
pharmaceutical
should,
markets.
as it should.
And that's just what's going to happen. We're seeing it already. We know that folks that kind of adapt to and take on medicinal cannabis as a part of their lives, that they regularly move away from pharmaceutical drugs, and this is just proven over and over and over again. And we actually have a lot of numbers coming from veterans
Yes.
who are receiving some of the best post-traumatic stress care in the country, period, okay, from the VA and other sources, but at the same time are finding tremendous relief from medicinal cannabis. And veterans are some of the biggest advocates for medicinal cannabis right now. So we're learning more about what it looks like. I think the VA is going to be forced to deal with this issue before our regular hospitals will.
Yeah, I think our traditional agencies, including law enforcement, is going to be forced to deal with it, because one of the things, as a former police officer, I'm thinking to myself, what are the criterions, or what are the set identifiers, if you will, of operating or behaving impaired under cannabis?
Well,
and someone has to actually identify that.
And so what if someone is not impaired under cannabis? And what if, like I said, what if it's just like a Tylenol or aspirin, and you lose some pain or you lose some anxiety, like with some of these other drugs that they're advertising? So maybe we have to change the idea of how we think about impairment, and
Exactly.
because we lump cannabis into a group with alcohol, or we lump it into a group with other type of drugs. And I don't think it really does. None of these other things are kind of trying to maintain an equilibrium. None of these other things are neuroregenerative.
Well, see, you keep saying that cannabis, you explain things about cannabis, but see, a police officer can't use cannabis.
Yeah.
No.
They can't use medicinal cannabis.
And
They
so,
can't. They can't. Okay.
So they're being denied.
Okay.
and so
You
this,
can't, and we know that you have cancer. You know that alleviates sickness
Yes.
of cancer, but we can't use it.
You know that it may improve their quality of life, right?
So
and
this-
you know their life is limited, their time is limited on this earth, right? And so let me just tell you something. My father is gone now, rest in peace, but he suffered from diabetes. And so he was born in Africa, raised in a village in Africa, and when he came to America, the diet and the lifestyle, kind of gave him diabetes relatively quick, okay? So he struggled with that and the lifestyle here, ended up getting end-stage renal disease, and suffered with that, was on dialysis for 8 years before he died. And so I know something about quality of life and wanting to spend nice quality time with the folks before they leave this earth. And for me, denying people medicine, denying families quality time with people, it is just an abomination for me. And so that's why I've been an advocate and an activist like this. I just, denying people something that we all call medicine and something that we all know has very little side effects, it just feels so wrong to this veteran.
And there's one demographic that we're not talking about. Again, I mentioned the 95-year-old grandmother in Jamaica for a reason. The population of the elder community, senior citizens now who are also consuming cannabis. Please do your research. There's a high probability that once they start to consume again or start, they won't use the pharmaceuticals or won't find a need for it.
And this is a process. Folks would like to be able to include their doctors and healthcare teams, right?
Yes.
As they're coming down off some of these crazy pills, we would hope that their healthcare teams are engaged, right? But it's not something that's been encouraged.
But I think there's another area that that I think we need to think through socially is using medicinal cannabis for school-age kids. especially high school, when you have kids who are actually have been prescribed this medication,
Right.
and how do we house it in the school? What
And what's
containers?
how is it? When is it appropriate?
Yes, and how do we contain it? How is it contained? What type of container is it in to make sure that it was properly administered? And all those things have to be thought through as well.
So
So those are social things that we have not even.
Ibina had wanted to know what was the correct dosage and how do we tell our children. She asked that question.
Good, good.
So as a medical assistant, it's the same with any aspirin or Tylenol. There's no one size that fits all.
Yeah.
So you start off with small dosages. Yeah. So if it's an edible, if it's and it depends on the dosage of that edible. If it's the size,
Depending on your body chemistry and makeup as well.
Chemistry, makeup, and all of those things. It's just like anything else. You have to be cognizant of who you're giving and how much you're giving and how that person's system will react to that. Now, we know that with the aspirin and Tylenol, there's a whole host of side effects. What we do know is if someone consumes a little bit of cannabis, the side effects are hungry, happy, or sleepy. And I'm not being sarcastic with that. Dr. Uma will confirm those reactions. However, if you're not accustomed to cannabis and you consume, you might not know how to feel. So you should probably, for the first time, be around someone else who has used cannabis in a looking for in a responsible
we need
way.
to be careful, right?
Yes.
Look at, so I want people to think about this. If you've never ever used marijuana or cannabis in your adult or childhood life that you can remember, then the time that you were exposed to the most cannabinoids would have been when you were a little baby with your mommy, and whether you might have breastfed, and that's really where your cannabinoid levels would have been maintained at a better rate.
In your breast milk.
And it's because the endocannabinoid system is tied to some of the oldest processes we have. Go to sleep, time to eat, some of our reproductive stuff there.
Systems.
Our brain and other things. It's connected to all of these things, and that's why it can affect all of these things and have what we consider a nice effect.
But it won't kill you, though.
And that's why it doesn't kill you too.
And it won't hurt
It's not
your
stimulating
organs.
your cannabinoid system. It's
It won't cause
balancing it.
blindness. It won't cause internal bleeding. Now, I'm a medical assistant, and when you look at half or even a quarter of the side effects that the majority of the medicines that you are prescribed and over-the-counter medicines that you're prescribed, it's scary. So if you are a parent, as I'm a parent, and my child had epilepsy or cancer or any of these ailments, I would prefer my child having CBD or some THC.
No
question. And
That's
again,
one of the first things I would go
First
to.
things I would
because
go
I
to.
know that my child is going to be more safe. I'm not going to have to deal with all these scary side effects that I see on TV. Internal bleeding, going blind, going
liver.
deaf, committing suicide. I mean, the
All
side
sorts.
effects are so
Horrible.
scary. And we know that every one of those things they're talking about was some court case somewhere.
But we are okay with this. We're okay with this, and we're not okay with the natural substance that nature gives us, right? And again, Dr. Bradley brought up a valid point about pharmaceuticals wanting to take over. So what are they wanting to put into the cannabis now? They're looking to have this fake cannabis medicine that's already killing people, Dr. Bradley. They're already trying to figure out how they will tell if it's Chief's cannabis or my cannabis coming from my grow op or somebody else's grow op. And they're talking about introducing a chemical in the medicine that will alert someone to where this thing is coming from. These people are ridiculous. Now, if you can't make medicine to cure any of the diseases that are out here, any of them have yet been cured
just
by
treating
pharmaceutical medicines.
Just treating them.
But it's known that cannabis does cure and heal you. Which one are you going to choose?
Cannabis is encouraging your body to
but-
do a more natural process, and really with and also with this cancer and cannabis stuff. Really, where this talk is coming from is because, once again, cannabis encourages your natural living cells to live out their normal life cycle.
Yeah,
and so when some cancerous cells go crazy, cannabis can encourage those cells to just go ahead and die a normal death and make way for some new ones.
Okay, I'm just sitting here listening, and I'm saying to myself, well, if I'm a CEO,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm a CEO of a pharmaceutical company, then why not use my economic, social, and legal apparatuses, if you will, to lobby certain
will.
people to limit the effectiveness, to limit the the sale of or cannabis, because this is going to be my competitor.
Yeah, they have been doing that, Dr. Bradley.
They will, but there's a tremendous demand, and education is being spread through the world now, and people are demanding what they now know to be true. And so if they're caring about themselves and their loved ones, cannabis is now increasingly becoming one of those trial options earlier and earlier for all different types of maladies. And we don't know, really, once you achieve some more type of homeostasis with cannabinoids, once you introduce cannabinoids to your body, the changes that you may experience can be shocking, because we don't realize all the different pains, aches, and little issues that we develop over time, and we don't know how much of those things are attributable to our lack of a cannabinoid balance or our diet, and it's surprising, and people will often report surprising things that they weren't even really trying to treat for.
Absolutely,
But-
especially the elderly.
But on that same vein of thought,
Yeah.
now I realize that my economical might cannot defeat. I can't defeat this cannabis guy.
No.
Right.
So what do I do what do I do as a cannabis
They're going to
manufacturer?
want to own the IP.
There you to go. What do I do to actually stop this? If I can't beat them, I'm gonna join them attitude, where I'm gonna actually buy them out,
Well,
limit what they can do.
I think what will happen, and this is before, so remember, we always have used cannabis in every medicine that we used to make. And so I think that it would be no problem for those apparatuses to get behind manufacturing good, clean cannabis medicine.
Yeah, cannabis is one of the most industrial plants in the world, and when we think about cannabis, I want you folks to think about the word canvas. Canvas and cannabis are coming from the same word. Canvas being used to put sails on all of the ships that traveled the world to spread the Western civilization
Made from cannabis.
and to enslave people,
Yes.
right?
Hemp.
Every single ship carried hemp.
Strongest fiber known
Seed,
to
which
man.
they would plant when they get to their place. They would raise it. They can grow this hemp. Now they can make more sails. They can make more rope and cordage. Hemp is edible, and is one of the original ingredients for gruel, of all things. Gruel being the base for the words we use sup and supper.
And
Okay,
supplement.
Right. So this is a deep part of who we are as human beings on this earth, and we've just become estranged with our relationship with this weed.
And not to mention the fact that if we were to go back to embracing cannabis in all its forms, hemp, we can make, again, we can reforest places that are deforested. And hemp is the only crop that doesn't need pesticides, right, Chief? And it regenerates itself far more faster than cotton and any other product that we've used.
Hemp fields were protected militarily. They were strategic because they were providing all of these resources for armies and navies.
And so again, if you do the research before the greedy DuPonts came in with all their petroleum and nylon and all the things that are not good for us, Dr. Bradley, all the things that were made from hemp never hurt any of us, and it was natural to the environment. Now remember, without the environment, Mother Earth, we are non-existent.
Well, I do, as a man of Christ, I do understand that the Father gives us everything we need on this earth
Everything.
natural
Everything.
to survive. Everything we need is here.
Everything.
But, when I think about, and I'm focusing on pharmaceutical because I think it's masterful
Yes.
at what they have done.
Yes.
They give us drugs that cause more harm
Than good.
to keep us It's like perpetual
It's scary.
illnesses,
How do you
so that they
trust?
can actually
Make money off
maintain
of
money.
us.
They're
Absolutely.
like sickness become a financial
Becomes
endeavor.
a way of life.
Yeah.
So in America, we don't have preventative medicine, Dr. Bradley. This is why I no longer am a medical assistant, because I remember when I was taught we did the oath, first do no harm. But then when I start to educate myself on the natural medicines that my mother taught me about, and it started to give me a conflict, yes? And when you see that people come in and they're no better when they came in than when they left, it's just horrible to see. And instead of a cure, we're maintaining dis-ease here in this country. We're not preventing anything. We're not curing anything, that's for sure. So if all the pharmaceuticals were working or giving us positive results, then we'd say we could keep these things, but it's not working. So if it's not working, we need to change that.
It's not working because the doctors are getting rich from the pharmaceutical companies. Okay, they're making money.
From
It's
folks being
unfortunate that
sick.
modern medicine doesn't really serve us better,
It's
and it's
sick
really
care.
out here.
So we actually have
Like a
sick
monster.
care in this country. And so with cannabis, this will alleviate a lot of our ailments.
It's an old world cure, and really we have to stop the disrespect for the old world and for
our ancestral knowledge.
Exactly. We have to stop that. And the Western world has kind of sold us these tricks and tricks
Bill
and
of
keeps
goods.
bringing us down this way.
Hoodwinked.
There are very old ways that have lasted for many, many people for very, very long times, and we should go ahead and try to be connected to those things so that we grow into the future and we don't just become.
Well, I think one of the things. I
mindless.
think one of the things that we have to be cognizant of, because you guys mentioned something that I think is going to be a huge fight, and that is the church, the nonprofits, because this particular substance is vehemently, repelled, if you will, at the church level.
Yes.
I don't see the church coming in as a vehicle to promote this.
But they need
a
to,
specific
Dr.
church
Bradley.
culture that's more popular now, right? We may get a different church culture, right?
come out of
that may be
this.
popular later. And I
Right, it's
think
possible.
if that's going to happen, don't we want to be proactive and kind of build that culture together with our younger generations?
Again, and
Yeah.
so we
But-
know that there aren't any young people in these churches any longer, Dr. Bradley.
And they don't go to church like we did when we were kids.
Right. And
Most
so-
churches done on television
Yes.
They
or
still crave and need all the same stuff. They still need community. They still need
Absolutely.
all the type of functions that
So-
are going on in church.
It would behoove the churches, specifically in the black community, to embrace what's already being embraced by the young people. So the churches being rigid is not going to stop the young people and the elder and the seniors who are in their pews from smoking cannabis or eating the gummy bears or the cookies that are made with THC and CBD. And so the best thing would be to do is to come fall in line and help to proliferate
Yeah.
clean cannabis,
Yeah.
right?
It's time to take cannabis and make something new out of it for
Absolutely.
everyone. And if we say, no, we don't want that, then you're just going to have to be on your heels and defensive and responding to the new culture all the
And
time.
you're also leaving that wide chasm for some big conglomerate cannabis company to come into our neighborhood and fill that vacuum.
Yeah.
So again, if the churches in this community
Imagine if a whole bunch of churches came
come
together,
together
and they said,
with all the money
they said,
that
you know
they
what,
have.
we're going to open the dispensary for this
Yes!
neighborhood. Nobody else is going to do it. They would open it faster. Probably it'd be bigger.
And more
it'd get more
efficiently.
money. It'd be
Hello?
more efficient, and everybody would shop there.
So
But
really-
because of our culture,
buying
these
into the
churches are not
stigma-
going to come together and do that.
Again.
When it's really an opportunity for nonprofits. I believe.
lost opportunity. So, Dr. Bradley, I know your friends are listening. And so, again, this is Judith Foster. And Chief and I are saying that this is an
This is the reality
opportunity
on Man
for
Radio.
you guys to come together and put together a conglomerate of your own and try to monopolize some of this
we
market.
need a center in Mattapan, and we need a center in Roxbury,
Dorchester.
please.
Absolutely. And so with all these churches, you guys could come together, build a co-op, a nice cannabis co-op, yeah? And make
You could
sure
grow it. You could
Yes.
distribute it. You
And
could
make
control
sure
all of
that
that.
your
You could
community is
decide
taken
which other
care of.
partners and businesses come to the neighborhood. You could advocate for policy and decide where that money goes. You could make sure it serves people in the neighborhoods. But like I said, we have to get over ourselves. We have to get over culture, and we have to kind of be more welcoming of the other strata
Yes.
of cultures,
And
like
instead
older
of-
and younger, and really come
And
together.
instead of using the power and the capital that you guys have as a unified body to repel this new industry,
Yeah.
why don't you welcome
Yeah.
the industry
Make us stronger
and
for
have
it.
some control
We just take
over
it,
how
co-opt
the
it,
industry
put
is.
it on the shelf, make it another resource we
Absolutely.
got.
I got-
Yes.
I got a couple of comments. Mamleo Boston says, current news. Hemp could join oranges, strawberries, tomatoes as top Florida crop under a bill unanimously
Florida's
passed
making
by the Senate. This bill Tuesday with glowing praise from senators who want to help an agriculture industry that's taken a lot of hits in recent years. It would create a state program to administer and oversee the growing of hemp for industrial uses to make everything from ropes to building materials to animal feed. Republican Senator Rob Bradley said our agriculture has been hit by setbacks ranging from citrus diseases to hurricanes over the last 2 decades. He said he wants Florida to become a national leader in the hemp industry. Ibina Kundell says cannabis is a holy sacrament to Rastafari as well as some
black folks in
Hindu
Florida,
groups. Ibina also says pygmies and how many others.
Well, you know,
Absolutely.
I'm sitting back and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you can do that with the churches. The churches are becoming, the baby boomers are occupying the church now.
Yes.
In the future, it will be the Gen X and all those guys are actually occupying, and I think you're going to see a different look at the church will probably behave a little differently around this issue. But in the interim, you can also be very strategic when companies are coming into the community to set up their cannabis shops. And you can make sure that those shops are having a positive impact on the community, as opposed to what I call an alcohol, a liquor store impact on our community. You see them,
Absolutely.
On the different community,
And
different
that
streets.
business should be supported by the other businesses to
Well,
be able to affect that.
That's where I'm going. I'm saying, so you can have a situation where the businesses are well kept. They're participating in the programs of the community. They are supported by the community, but they are supporting the community.
Absolutely.
Those are the actors we want to include. We want to
Absolutely.
exclude everyone
Yeah.
else that's
Absolutely,
not like that.
Dr. Bradley.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what we want
So
to see.
I think you would have a situation where companies coming in from states who are first on the forefront of legalizing marijuana or cannabis, and those companies have a good understanding of how to set up shop in the community and become a viable component of that community that will actually provide resources that are no longer there. A lot better than what's happening, or I should say, better than what's happening
Yes.
with our liquor stores. See,
Yes.
one of the things I don't want to see is that these new shops coming into the community of color, into the community, having an adverse impact like the liquor stores did.
And just extract
and just
value.
extract. That's it. They're just pulling and they're not putting back.
And there's another thing that we ought to think about that I believe we ought to prioritize. Now, I'm not dogging Governor Baker, but he's allowing all this gambling. Yeah? The churches, again, pick your battles, people. The governor's advocating for gambling and more gambling. We're having casinos and off-track betting.
Which is about drinking too.
Hello, and all some other stuff. And, before Ayanna Pressley was elected as, Congresswoman, I love her to death. I love her. She proliferated liquor license. I am not for that. I am against more liquor licenses being in the community because alcohol is not your friend.
Yeah, that'd be
I
right,
would
too.
rather, I have 2 boys, one is dead and one's alive. I would rather my boys smoke 10 pounds of weed than drink a pint of alcohol.
That's a mom, and she's not alone.
And again, I would rather see a dispensary on the corner of my block next to my school than an alcohol liquor store that's killing your liver, ruining families, causing accidents, murder, death, mayhem. Now, people, we need to pick our battles.
Right, and so you got in Dudley, in Nubian Square, we have the City on a Hill,
Good
right?
Lord.
And the kids come down from City on a Hill, right? And they see all that's going on in the square there. There's a strip club immediately across the street from the kids when they come out of
Oh, yes.
the City on a Hill down there
Nobody
in Nubia
talks
Square. I don't
about
know
that.
if people were aware of
The
that.
Highland
but
Tap,
there's
it's
also
been there
liquor
forever.
stores and probably needles and all kinds of other stuff going on in Nubia Square too.
And hang on, when you say needles, let's stop right there for a minute. Now, folks are talking about the smell of cannabis and we don't want this and we don't want that. But right down the street, you have drug addicts who are zooted out of their minds and ruining themselves. And we're okay with this, and we're not up in arms, we're not marching, we're not telling the Baker administration that clean this up.
It
This
doesn't
is a
have to. We
detriment
don't have
to our
to let
community.
people. We don't have to treat people like
No,
that.
we
There
don't.
are other things we can do. It's what we prioritize and what we want to do.
Yes, and cannabis also could be a weaner. Don't know if that's the proper term, off of the opioids.
Yeah,
You know,
we got you. We got what you're saying, but my thing is, I like to look at it from both perspectives. What are the downsides of cannabis? We talked about the good sides of it. What are the downsides? Because we all know the downside of opioids and alcohol and all those things. What are the things that cannabis would do to us that we haven't discussed?
I think initially the worst thing was its illegality. Frankly,
Okay.
that was the most dangerous thing.
Ruining
First.
lives.
Now we're looking at this new economy and what is that really going to mean for folks? And to me, that's really it. The herb itself, I think people will just start incorporating cannabis into more parts of their life, and it'll be less about smoking. I truly believe that.
We have not come to a situation, we haven't, where we can gauge how much smoking is detrimental to driving. Because we have that gentleman that killed that state trooper.
That gentleman
Well,
did not kill that state trooper.
He may
I
have
beg
done
to
that, but
differ.
we whether it's based on the cannabis, right? We can't say that's because of
Okay.
weed.
And again, there's proof that cannabis does not kill. We can get Dr.
No,
Umar to come
Let
to
me address
the
this
station.
driving thing, though. Let me address this driving thing because I drove armed trucks for the U.S. Army. I was a truck driver and a M2 gunner in Iraq when I served for the Army, and so I've been trained to drive heavy vehicles by the federal government. Know how to drive. Got a lot of miles in Iraq, and so I'm familiar with what real impairment is, and I know how to drive relatively well. And I can tell you that this is really overblown, and they're trying to maintain some of the criminalizing money stuff by trying to retain their ability to criminalize people for consumption, and then you go on the road, or consumption, and then you go there, or it's just a furtherance of criminalization. That impairment does not exist. What happens is you can say you get a head change, you can say it does this, you can say that, but you can't say you're impaired when you're comparing it to alcohol, where you have roadblocks and all of it's absolutely nothing like that. And I want to let people think about this. I want to people to think about the epidemic of road rage, think about the epidemic of anxiety and all the other things that are going on. And I'm going to tell you that it's safer for some of these drivers to be under the influence of weed before they go driving, acting like a maniac, trying to get home or trying to get to the supermarket, cutting people off, screaming at people, losing their mind, forgetting who they are. I'd rather have them smoke a joint.
Yes, and let me say something. So a bus driver, MBTA, can't smoke weed, you can't drink, yeah, because you're tested. Cut me off the other day, and it was the first time that I actually had to call and complain about a bus driver because it was deliberate. He wasn't under the influence, and I must say I had a discussion with Chief this morning before we go. Losing my child and being traumatized from that loss gives me more of an impairment than any joint or 10 joints ever did. So I want you police officers to think about what really is impaired driving. If I'm distraught from going into an argument with my husband or my child and get behind a wheel,
crushing white supremacy in our society,
and get behind a wheel, that is not safe. But if I smoke a joint and I'm behind the wheel, there's no safer person, I believe, and you can ask any doctor who's worth their salt behind a wheel, I'm a more safer person on the road than the mom who just lost their child
So it's
or his
yeah.
morning.
So it's not just to totally deny the thing, but it's to let's put it into the real perspective. Let's really find out what we're really talking about and what we're really concerned about.
Yes.
And do we have, is that warranted? Is that fear really coming from our propaganda and stigma and our estranged culture? And is there a better way to kind of relate to this and see how we do these things? I think there is, and I think police officers are well trained to spot when someone's driving
erratically,
not the way they're supposed to be. And I think if that's the main concern, then I think we should focus on that and not say that they're doing this because they're a cannabis consumer, or
Right.
not say they're doing this because they're black, or not saying it because they're from this neighborhood, or not say because it's because of how much money they do or don't have.
And again, Percocet and Advil and Zoloft and all those other drugs that are prescribed to you gives you more of a depletion of your cognizant abilities than any cannabis
I mean,
could.
we have these people, they like become zombies and stab people, and then they
Absolutely.
say, what happened? And they say, oh, I got off my medication. I don't know what happened.
or I missed my pill.
That's
this morning.
terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And we got our children out here.
And we're having people afraid of cannabis or a joint. Come on, folks.
No.
We've got to pick our battles. And please, use your common sense. Use your common sense.
Well, you know, there's been so much social conditioning around this particular
Herb.
herb. You know, I'm thinking cannabis was, I read somewhere that it was associated with loss of memory. Did you hear anything at all about it? Any
So
comments
this is
on that?
Part of the culture, we get into stuff like that, and it's part of it is a joke that's based on some other element of the cannabis culture. You know what I mean? People are forgetful and stuff like
And
that.
that's not true, because if it were, doctors are now looking at cannabis as a fix for Alzheimer's. Hello? So again, people, please use your common sense.
I think cannabis really can allow people to get away from their ego a little bit and remove themselves and see their self in a different perspective, which can be so radically valuable. And I want you to think about a veteran coming back experiencing PTSD. His mind is still in the war and the stress of the war, and really he can't get out of his mind state. But with something like cannabis, you do a 180, see his whole life different, and say, wait a minute, why am I acting crazy? I just need to do this and calm down.
You know, one of the things that that hit me, I just had this thought. We hear all these things about cannabis, and they criminalized it, but they failed to criminalize tobacco.
Oh, let's discuss that, Dr. Bradley.
It's like,
We know the harms
we know
that
what
cigarette.
happened.
So we're okay with our kid
Yeah.
being around secondhand smoke when we know that it will
Tobacco,
kill you.
big early cash crop.
And it will kill you. No, literally kill you. But we're not talking about that, yeah? When we go to work in the morning, we
Basically,
pass
like an
by,
American
we
cat-
smell
the American
cigarettes,
cash crop.
yeah? We talk about we're having cigarette with a coffee, with a cup of tea, and that's okay.
Or vaping.
We've normalized that, yes? But the thought of cannabis that is a healer and medicine and a sacrament, we're having this fit, especially in the black community when it was slung against you, so we're buying into the self-hate.
It's
again.
amazing. It's truly amazing.
Can we
Think about,
please?
let's just say 30 years ago, and how folks would have been treated with getting caught with weed on the street. And now look at the stores in Manhattan.
No, look at
How
John
are
Boner
people supposed to
from the
adapt to
United
this type of
States
cultural
Senate
change?
and Congress now. He's now invested in cannabis. Hello?
After watching this Republican Party for years act like, it's just very disorienting. And so for anyone who's been paying any attention, it's time to just claim your own culture
Yes.
here and stop following these folks.
We got a couple of comments. I'm getting
Having fun.
Leon Beal. Reclaim our community, provide jobs, businesses, and housing. If only we unify and mobilize. Great idea, guaranteed success. Joseph Eubanks. The churches are sorry and can't even develop the buildings next to its own edifice. We need to own these bodegas and fast food restaurants in our in our church neighborhoods. Everyone is coming in our neighborhoods and sucking the money out. The whites and now the Middle East and Far Easterners. The churches take your tithes and offerings and do nothing in most cases. They don't even regularly support HBCUs. Please. Ibina says cannabis is not for everyone, just like chocolate, coffee, etc. Juan Jose Sione says, very soon police officers won't know how to do. We need to be careful about talking about effect of drugs on people based on anecdotal and personal experience for a whole society.
Again,
Amen.
so again, it's not, when I talk
Come
about,
closer to your mic.
it's not anecdotal. I don't know what's wrong with the mic, but
Is it
it's not anecdotal.
That's better.
It's proved science. And so again, we're not just in the last 10, 20, 30 years using cannabis, people. If you will do the research, cannabis has been used in medicinal items from the 1800s and beyond. So this is nothing new. And yes, you are correct. Even water, if you get too much, can be a harm to you.
So salt or
Sugar
right?
is a harm to you, but we're not telling people that don't use sugar unless you have
But we know you can
diabetes or
die from
something.
sugar.
So again, let's use our common sense, people, and not be ridiculous in our comments. Thank you.
Jose is challenging you. He says, I'm for legalizing marijuana, but this belief that marijuana is a cure-all for everything. Marijuana is legal. These two guests are talking like marijuana is still legal. What we need to address now is responsible use, so people that decide to indulge in marijuana use. Name me studies that back up your claim.
No, actually,
Also, he says most of the research in marijuana is anecdotal,
It
and
is
most
not.
likely and most lately pushed by marijuana investment industry.
okay. First of all, I'm gonna push back a little bit on that. I think if we name studies, you still have to go back out and read those studies and actually formulate your own opinion. And you have to also understand that even when you conduct studies, you have to be cognizant of the bias of the researcher. That's one piece. My other piece on this is that not only we're going to talk about, we need to think through responsible usage of marijuana, but you also need to think about responsible distribution of the marijuana plant. I think there's two pieces here, because again, there's there's an opportunity here for companies who are coming in, if we do not do this on our own and form those collaborations among organizations within our community to actually buy these licenses to do it, we can still be cognizant of the companies who are coming in our community to distribute them, and making sure that those companies are positive in organizations that's going to be of the community, not about draining from the community.
Absolutely.
So I think there's ways that we have to look at. So I don't want to get locked in just on usage, but also about distribution.
But I want to encourage people out there to do research.
Yes.
And most of the research on cannabis has frankly been forbidden. But there is research out there. There's tons of research out
can
there.
dig and find
and most of it was conducted by the government, or with the blessing of the government.
Yes.
Now, the reason why you don't hear about a lot of it is because that research doesn't prove what they try and go out to prove, which is cannabis is bad. Usually what the research shows and proves, and I encourage everyone to go just look up 1, 2, or 3 cannabis research studies. I dare you. But most of these programs will come back and say what the cannabis community has always been saying. And so we can know how effective it is for someone who is an epileptic, and we can know how bad epilepsy can affect their life. At the same time, we know please look up cannabis as a neuroregenerative properties. Look up cannabis and its anti-emetic properties. Please look up cannabis and any of these researches that have been going on. I dare anyone in the audience there, please look up 5 different research on cannabis, and you will be shocked. You've been lied to.
And if anybody had listened to the reality broadcast when we interviewed Cara Cat Burnham, who has a pregnant Caucasian woman who visited Brigham and Women's Hospital during her pregnancy, and she had a dis-ease that she had to maintain and manage while pregnant, she was able to use cannabis all through her pregnancy, And I wanted to bring her back to talk about how beautiful and how smart her child is. And to preface with, they did a study back in the early 70s in Jamaica with the pregnant women there. But that study is not being proliferated either.
There's plenty of studies,
There's
but
plenty of
the
studies.
propaganda like to say there's no studies and we don't know anything. When actually we do know a lot. We know a very, very much. It's just that the same folks have been saying, we don't know anything. This is all new.
Right.
It's not all new, folks.
Or-
we've been saying the same thing for a very,
Or
very
they've
long
been
time.
proliferating the reefer madness
Rastas have been saying the same
propaganda.
thing forever.
Yes.
So go tell the Rastas that they haven't been saying the same thing for a long time. I don't know.
Yeah, and the 95-year-old grandmother who swears by it for all that ails
So
her.
this is not new.
No,
It
it's
is
not.
Don't let anyone tell you
And-
that we're finding new medical things for can't. Don't believe it, folks. It's already been
and
there.
just for personal references, that I don't talk about. I suffered severe injuries years ago, degenerative issues, and I'm not supposed to even be sitting here or even walking today. But I am, and I owe that to partly God and cannabis that keeps me sitting here for as long as I have without doubling over in excruciating pain. And as I sit here today, I am in pain. I live with chronic, debilitating pain that the normal person probably would not be able to
and
sustain.
there's no cure for it. This is a lifestyle you live, right?
Yes,
And-
but here I am
Yep.
this morning, being able to come out of my bed and it's raining outside. Without cannabis, I would not be able to put my shoes on or function this morning. So yes, you're looking at tangible, codified evidence right here on your screen, and you're listening to it as
Cannabis
well.
consumers in the community are used to kind of being ignored by the
Yes.
main. We're very used to it. So we just develop our own culture, just do the right thing. We do the research, we develop the education, the knowledge, and we proliferate it. And now, of course, as you can see, things are changing. Education is being
Yes.
proliferated. People are changing their mind. They're realizing cannabis is absolutely not what people have been telling them it is. It was never so dangerous that we had to
Never.
be chased down
Never.
with guns and locked up in jail.
Never.
Never was true.
Never.
Never, ever was
Never,
true.
never made
see,
anybody crazy.
Another part of the pushback on cannabis would be
Yep.
re-educating and retooling
Yes.
people who are responsible for maintaining order.
They've been made ineffective, haven't they?
Yes.
They've taken our law enforcement from us.
Yes, yes.
Just like the health care.
I love
By
that statement,
this
Dr.
dishonesty,
Bradley.
I mean, it's not right. We
Yeah.
don't get the same service
Yeah.
we're supposed to get from our law enforcement who we pay and we want to have a good relationship with.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, we're all forced to deal with this
Law
lie.
and order, but we need protect and serve just like the Caucasian communities, right? So again, folks, pick your battles. Again, pick your battles and try to approach each subject with an informed mind and an open mind, and not come with the propaganda and the rhetoric that you've either listened to on Fox News or from your friend who is just as dunce or uninformed as you are.
So as a veteran, when I came back to the States, I was suffering with what I call post-traumatic stress. I dropped the D. I don't think it's a disorder. But so as a veteran, I came back, and as I started doing the research on cannabis and just really finding out how wrong cannabis prohibition was, as a veteran, we live by code. You know what I mean? And in the theater, you don't just do whatever. You have a code, and you have to be a moral person, and you don't have to follow an immoral order
That's
you don't.
right.
ever.
No.
Like someone go ahead and try to make me do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's how I felt about this cannabis rules when I came back here when I was looking at it in Massachusetts. I said, wait a minute, this is immoral. You got sick people staying at home. They want to be able to use this thing. You created medicinal cannabis. Now you're telling them leave their house, go line up somewhere downtown, pay their money, do all this weirds.
Ludicrous.
That's insane.
Ludicrous.
And so that's why I just started delivering medicinal cannabis, because I felt like that's the right thing to do to serve my community. And because I was a veteran with some privilege, and I have this code that says don't do immoral stuff.
Yeah, but I think it's important to understand, though, that, and I think you see this in Washington, D.C., the establishment has an internal code internal desire to protect itself.
Yes.
You know, and cannabis in a large part, in many ways, is a threat to the
Represents the
establishment.
alternative
Yes.
culture.
Yes,
Yes.
it does.
Yes.
It represents it, and it threatens.
Yes.
It threatens the establishment. And when the establishment is threatened, it uses those apparatuses that it has put in place over years to protect itself. You know, and we only discuss some of them here, but there's a whole host of them. But what I'm saying to you, and I think it's very important, I'm going back to it, is that we as inner city members of the community, we as the community who has been victimized by illegal, usage of marijuana, cannabis, however you want to frame it, should also benefit from the legal use of it.
Yes.
And we don't have to, we can benefit in multiple ways. But one of the
Yes.
ways I think is important is also the social benefits from
Yes,
it.
Dr.
How are we going to make sure that we do not have a situation in our cannabis industry that we have in our alcohol industry, or a situation in our cannabis industry that we have in our tobacco industry? You know what I mean? So I'm saying to the community and to the people within my earshot of my voice is think through, number one, voting for people who are going to be at the table to make sure that your interests are actually on the table and that it's not changed, by the way.
And protected.
And protect your interests. That's the first thing. And number two is that the community be willing to actually come to and work with the entity who has decided to come in and set up shop in the community to distribute this
It's
stuff.
the community's obligation to do that.
Absolutely.
It's their responsibility to do that. It's not enough or okay anymore to just say, no, we don't want that weed around here. If you do that, you're really encouraging the establishment, like you're saying, to go ahead and take over the whole thing.
Fill that
And
gap.
so since the establishment is kind of lost and has decided, oh, well, let's just co-opt this whole cannabis community thing, we and other folks need to start thinking about it in the same way.
Yes.
And start saying, we don't have the right to deny our neighbor access to cannabis. But what we do have a right to do is to build a healthy community here and support people around us.
Safe access to clean, clean, healthy cannabis.
We want the best.
That's important.
How do you have the best and not some low quality thing?
Okay, as I talk about the community, one of the questions I ask myself, and I just asked it myself, what do I see as safe, helpful financial support for the community when these people arrive? Because I think that's important. I think that you can just see the money. Think about what happened when it was illegal, like alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
It was many people was getting rich, including the Kennedys, by the
Absolutely.
way. But now that it's legal, when these companies come in, how can they financially support our schools?
Yes.
How they can financially support
The
the
community
cleanliness of the
centers.
community, the grassroots organizations.
Yes.
Those are all the kind of things that we need to kind of come and
We
talk.
should have
and
had
talk
this
through.
conversation, having
had
this conversation.
Yes,
Because
when
they're already coming
policies
in,
were
you know
being
what I mean?
made.
Yeah.
And this is
Okay.
where I hold the CCC accountable.
It's
People-
local municipality. These lower politicians got a lot of responsibility. Towns, cities, and
Absolutely.
towns. They haven't been
Absolutely.
educating folks. They haven't been proactive. They haven't been ushering
And I
in
must
this new
say,
age.
Kim Janey is trying to change that, and I applaud her effort. And I think that more people should have came out in front of this legislation prior to, not after the fact. But I must applaud her for recognizing that it's not going the way that we thought it would go, and there needs to be a going back to the drawing board and rewrite some of these policies.
Ayanna
All right.
Presley got in front of that. Even Tito Jackson
Yeah.
was part of that. And so I think that what you're seeing there is them trying to be part of that conversation to say, hey, this is what we expected, what we want to
All
see.
right. Well, listen. The hour has gone by extremely fast.
Wow.
And we appreciate the conversation, but we have a time limit. Other than that, they're going to kick us off.
That's
so
right. So
we
we're-
want to say thank you, and Janice, I'm going to turn this over to you.
We're going to give you the last second, and then it's time to go.
Well, I'm just happy to be here. I appreciate the invite, and I just thank you to the whole audience out here. Ma'am, though, you got a fantastic show. Folks should be tuning in every week.
Absolutely. I just want to say thank you to Denise. I think you rock. I always
Thank
watch
you.
you. And thank you, Dr. Bradley.
I appreciate
I
that.
see that you guys have Welcome to Nubian Square here. I thought
like
that was
that. I
so
keep looking
cool.
up there. I like
love
that.
it, love it, love it.
See, it's just
And-
taking ownership.
Yes, and thank you, Pastor Wall. I feel like I'm back home. When you going to let me back home? I'm just saying. Chief and I, we're looking to come back home, so let us know. But again, thank you for having us, and this was a lively conversation. And for folks who want to pick up the book that Chief's reading, it's called Liber 420 Cannabis, Magical Herbs, and the Occult by Chris Bennett. And it's chock full of information. If you are looking for lots more in the context of cannabis, pick that book up. And hopefully we'll get invited back here again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Well,
we're
we gotta
out.
go. Be blessed.
Thank you.